Why did Roddy the Ruin fight Ormund Hightower? Warning, spoiler warning. Asterisk asterisk. This video contains major spoilers for the House of the Dragon Season 3 finale, the Battle of Tumbleton, and Roddy the Ruin and Ormund Hightower's fates. If you haven't watched the finale yet, this is your warning. Why did Roddy the Ruin fight Ormund Hightower? At first glance, their brutal confrontation in the House of the Dragon Season 3 finale might look like a personal grudge match. But it wasn't. Roddy Dustin and Ormund Hightower were fighting on opposite sides of the Targaryen civil war, and their final confrontation was really the violent result of two armies crashing together at exactly the wrong place and exactly the wrong time. And what makes the scene even more interesting is that both men had completely different reasons for being at Tumbleton. Let's start with Roddy. Roderick Dustin, better known as Roddy the Ruin, is the Lord of Barrowton and one of the most fearsome northern warriors fighting for Queen Rhaenyra. He leads the Winter Wolves, a group of hardened northern soldiers who have marched south to fight for the Black Cause. By the time we reach Tumbleton, Roddy and his men have already been through several brutal battles. They have fought the Greens in the Riverlands, survived the fighting around the lakeshore, and helped bring down Sir Criston Cole's army. So Roddy isn't some random soldier who suddenly appears at Tumbleton. He has become one of Rhaenyra's most dangerous battlefield commanders. And there is something very important about the Winter Wolves. Many of them are older men who know exactly what they're doing. They aren't young knights looking for glory. They understand that war may kill them. In fact, the Winter Wolves have essentially accepted that they may never return home. That mentality explains a lot about Roddy. He doesn't fight cautiously. He fights like a man who has already accepted death. And that becomes extremely important at Tumbleton. Now look at the other side. Ormund Hightower is commanding the Green forces. He is fighting for the Hightower cause and for the Green faction supporting King Aegon II. Ormund has also become one of the most important military leaders in the war. Earlier in Season 3, he demonstrated that he wasn't simply a battlefield commander. He was calculating, politically ambitious, and willing to use deception to gain an advantage. His capture of Tumbleton was particularly important. Tumbleton isn't just another village. Its location makes it strategically valuable, and controlling it gives the Greens a major position from which they can threaten the Black war effort. That is why Rhaenyra's forces eventually have to confront Ormund's army there. And this is where Roddy and Ormund's paths finally collide. The Battle of Tumbleton is not really about Roddy versus Ormund. It is about the Blacks trying to take back a strategically important position from the Greens. Roddy is there because he is one of Rhaenyra's commanders. Ormund is there because he is the commander of the Hightower army defending it. So when these two men finally meet, they are effectively the faces of two opposing armies. And neither man has much reason to back down. The stakes are enormous. If Ormund survives and maintains control of Tumbleton, the Green position becomes stronger. If Roddy can break the Hightower army, the Blacks have a chance to turn the battle in their favor. And Roddy isn't interested in simply surviving. He wants to destroy the enemy commander. That is why he keeps pushing forward even when the battle becomes completely chaotic. The actual confrontation becomes even more brutal because Roddy's Winter Wolves are badly outnumbered. The Black forces initially struggle against Ormund's army. The Greens have archers and heavy cavalry, and the first stage of the battle goes badly for Rhaenyra's side. But Roddy's men don't simply run. Instead, the Winter Wolves launch a ferocious attack through the Green lines. This is where Roddy's reputation as the Ruin becomes important. He isn't fighting like a conventional commander, sitting safely behind his soldiers. He personally pushes into the battle, and eventually the northern fighters reach Ormund. That's the moment when the wider battle suddenly becomes personal. Roddy is effectively trying to eliminate the Green Army's commander, and Ormund has every reason to defend himself. The show makes this confrontation particularly savage. Roddy gets close enough to attack Ormund, and the two become locked in a desperate struggle. Then comes one of the most shocking moments. Roddy manages to fatally attack Ormund, but the fight doesn't end cleanly. The battlefield is already collapsing into chaos. Dragonfire is spreading, soldiers are dying everywhere, and the entire battle is becoming impossible to control. Roddy and Ormund both end up caught in that destruction. This is also where the show's version differs from George R.R. Martin's Fire and Blood. In the book, Roddy's death is already legendary. The Winter Wolves charge through overwhelming numbers to reach Ormund's position. Ormund's cousin, Sir Brynden Hightower, steps in to protect him. Brynden strikes Roddy with a long axe and cuts off Roddy's shield arm. But Roddy keeps fighting. Despite suffering a catastrophic wound, he kills Brynden and then kills Ormund before finally dying from his own injuries. The television adaptation changes the details and presentation of this encounter, but it keeps the central idea intact. Roddy reaches Ormund, Roddy kills Ormund, and Roddy dies in the process. So was Roddy trying to get revenge? Not exactly. There isn't a long personal history between these two characters that suddenly explodes at Tumbleton. Their conflict is much bigger than that. Roddy represents the northern forces fighting for Rhaenyra. Ormund represents the Hightower-led Green War effort. Their fight is essentially the dance of the dragons reduced to two men in the middle of a battlefield. And there is another reason Roddy is so willing to make that final charge. He knows what the Winter Wolves came south to do. They came to fight, and they were prepared to die. That doesn't mean Roddy is suicidal for no reason. It means he understands the reality of the war. If he can kill Ormund, he can potentially destroy the Green's command structure and give the Black Army a chance to survive. And that's exactly what happens. Ormund's death creates a major leadership crisis for the Green Army. The problem is that the Blacks don't get the clean victory they were expecting, because Tumbleton has another surprise waiting: Ulf the White. The dragon rider who was supposed to be an enormous advantage for Rhaenyra becomes one of the most unpredictable elements of the entire battle. Instead of simply helping one side win, Ulf's actions turn the battlefield into a nightmare. Dragonfire begins destroying soldiers and civilians alike. Tumbleton is consumed by chaos. And that completely changes the meaning of Roddy's victory. He succeeds in killing Ormund, but he cannot turn that achievement into a decisive Black victory. This is one of the most tragic parts of the story. Roddy accomplishes exactly what he set out to do. He reaches the enemy commander, he destroys him, but the war doesn't stop. The battle doesn't suddenly become a victory, and Roddy doesn't get to go home. His death becomes another example of how the Dance of the Dragons destroys even the warriors who achieve heroic victories. And that's ultimately why Roddy the Ruin fought Ormund Hightower. It wasn't because Ormund had personally wronged Roddy. It wasn't because the two men had some secret rivalry. They fought because they represented two sides of the same war. Roddy was fighting for Rhaenyra and the Blacks. Ormund was fighting for the Greens and the Hightower cause. Tumbleton was strategically important, and both commanders understood that losing the battle could have enormous consequences. But Roddy's personality made the confrontation especially memorable. He wasn't the kind of warrior who would stand back and let somebody else take the risk. The Winter Wolves followed him because he was willing to go into the same danger he demanded from them. That is why his final attack feels so different from a normal military maneuver. It feels almost like a last charge, and in a way it is. Roddy knows his chances of surviving the war are becoming smaller and smaller, yet he keeps fighting. That is the meaning behind his reputation as Roddy the Ruin. He doesn't simply survive battles, he seems to become more dangerous the closer he gets to death. And Ormund is the perfect target for that final fury. Because if Roddy can take down the Green Commander, he can at least make his death count for something. In the show, the confrontation is also deliberately ugly and chaotic. There is nothing glamorous about the way these men die. The battle around them is filled with confusion, fire, betrayal, and collapsing armies. Roddy kills Ormund, but he is then caught in the destruction surrounding them. It reinforces one of the biggest themes of House of the Dragon. There are no truly clean victories in the dance. Even when one side wins a moment, somebody else pays for it. And Tumbleton is probably one of the best examples of that idea. The Blacks manage to kill Ormund, but they don't gain a simple victory. The Greens lose their commander, but the Black forces are devastated. Tumbleton itself suffers catastrophic destruction. And Roddy the Ruin, one of the most fearless warriors fighting for Rhaenyra, is gone. There is also an important difference between the show and the book. In Fire and Blood, Roddy's death is even more legendary. After the Winter Wolves break through the Green Army, Roddy fights his way toward Ormund. Brynden Hightower cuts off Roddy's shield arm, but Roddy continues fighting and kills both Brynden and Ormund before dying from his wounds. The show changes the choreography and circumstances of the final encounter, but it preserves the essential idea of Roddy sacrificing himself to eliminate the Green Commander. And that is why the fight matters. Roddy wasn't chasing Ormund because of hatred. He was chasing the most important target on the battlefield, the enemy commander. And once Roddy reached him, there was almost no chance that either man would walk away. So if you were wondering why Roddy the Ruin suddenly went after Ormund Hightower in the finale, the answer is actually pretty simple. They were commanders on opposite sides of the most brutal civil war Westeros had ever seen. Ormund had Tumbleton. Rhaenyra's army needed it. Roddy was one of the Black commanders who could reach him. And Roddy did what Roddy had always done. He charged straight into the danger. He killed the enemy commander. And he died fighting. That is why Roddy the Ruin's final battle is so memorable. He didn't win the Dance of the Dragons. He didn't survive to see how the war ended. But for one final moment, he became exactly what his name promised. Roddy the Ruin. A warrior who marched south expecting to die, and made sure the man standing against him died first.